The Barnum effect is one of psychology's most elegant demonstrations of how easily humans confuse vague statements with personal truth. Named after showman P.T. Barnum, this cognitive phenomenon reveals why millions of people worldwide believe astrology accurately describes their personality when the descriptions could apply to almost anyone. The effect works through a simple mechanism. When people read statements like "you have a great need for other people to like you," or "you tend to be critical of yourself," their brains immediately scan for confirming memories while ignoring countless counterexamples. This selective recall creates an illusion of accuracy that feels deeply personal, even when the statement contains no specific information whatsoever. In 1948, psychologist Bertram Forer conducted an experiment that would become legendary in psychology textbooks. He administered a personality test to his students, then ignored their actual answers and gave every single student an identical personality profile copied from a newsstand astrology book. When asked to rate how accurately the profile described them, students averaged a rating of 4.2 out of 5. They believed these generic horoscope statements captured their unique essence, never suspecting every classmate received the same words. Forer had stumbled upon something profound about human psychology. We are remarkably willing to recognize ourselves in vague, flattering descriptions, especially when we believe those descriptions were created specifically for us. The mechanism behind this effect involves several cognitive processes working together. First, confirmation bias drives people to notice and remember instances that support the personality description while dismissing contradictory evidence. Second, the statements themselves are crafted with careful ambiguity, often containing opposing traits that allow for multiple interpretations. A horoscope might say someone is generally confident, but occasionally doubts themselves, or outgoing with close friends, but reserved with strangers. These contradictions don't weaken the effect. They strengthen it by covering all possible behaviors. Third, people tend to interpret vague statements through the lens of their own experiences, essentially filling in the blanks with their personal history and thereby creating a false sense of specificity. When researchers began examining whether birth months showed any correlation with personality traits, they entered controversial territory. The scientific consensus firmly rejects astrological claims, yet some studies have identified small statistical associations between birth season and certain characteristics. A 2007 study analyzing over 58,000 participants found weak but measurable links between birth month and self-reported personality dimensions. People born in summer months scored slightly higher on measures of novelty-seeking, while those born in winter showed marginally different patterns in harm avoidance. These findings, however, had nothing to do with celestial alignments and everything to do with environmental factors during early development. Temperature, sunlight exposure, maternal nutrition, and seasonal infections during pregnancy and early infancy can influence brain development in subtle ways. Babies born in winter experience different environmental conditions than summer babies, potentially affecting neurodevelopment during critical early months. Additionally, being the oldest or youngest in a school cohort, which correlates with birth month in many educational systems, can shape personality through social dynamics and expectations. A child who starts school as the oldest in their class may develop different confidence levels than one who enters as the youngest. These findings don't validate astrology. Instead, they demonstrate how complex environmental and social factors can create weak statistical patterns that superstitious thinking might misinterpret as cosmic influence. The difference between these genuine but tiny statistical associations and astrological claims becomes clear when examining effect sizes. The personality differences linked to birth season in rigorous studies account for less than 1% of personality variation, far too small to predict individual traits with any meaningful accuracy. Astrology, meanwhile, claims to predict specific personality characteristics with confidence based purely on celestial positions at birth. No properly controlled scientific study has ever demonstrated such predictive power. When astrologers' predictions are tested under controlled conditions where they cannot rely on cold reading techniques or vague statements, their accuracy drops to chance levels. The human mind's pattern-seeking nature makes astrological thinking almost irresistible. Throughout evolution, recognizing patterns meant survival. Noticing that certain berries caused illness, or that animal tracks indicated prey gave our ancestors crucial advantages. This pattern recognition became so powerful that it sometimes fires even when no real pattern exists, creating what psychologists call apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. When someone reads that Scorpios are passionate and then recalls passionate moments in their life while forgetting calm, measured ones, they experience apophenia reinforced by confirmation bias. The brain constructs a narrative of correlation that feels compelling despite having no causal foundation. Social and cultural factors amplify these cognitive tendencies. When astrology appears widely accepted in someone's community, believing it carries social benefits. Discussing zodiac signs creates bonding opportunities and provides a shared language for talking about personality and relationships. Dismissing astrology might mean excluding oneself from these social interactions. Additionally, astrology offers psychological comfort by providing simple explanations for complex human behaviors and relationships. Instead of grappling with the intricate, often frustrating reality that people act unpredictably for countless reasons, astrology offers tidy categories and clear predictions. This reduction of complexity feels satisfying even when it sacrifices accuracy. The persistence of astrological belief, despite overwhelming scientific evidence against it, reveals something important about how humans process information. We are not purely rational creatures who objectively evaluate evidence and update beliefs accordingly. Instead, we are storytelling beings who construct meaningful narratives from our experiences. When a belief system like astrology provides emotionally satisfying stories about ourselves and others, contradictory evidence often fails to dislodge those beliefs. The narrative feels true because it creates coherence and meaning, not because it makes accurate predictions. Understanding this distinction helps explain why intelligent, educated people can simultaneously understand scientific evidence against astrology while still finding personal meaning in their zodiac sign. Modern psychology recognizes that while astrology lacks predictive validity, the human needs it addresses are genuine. People want to understand themselves, connect with others, and find meaning in their experiences. Rather than dismissing these needs, scientific psychology offers evidence-based alternatives like validated personality assessments that measure real psychological dimensions. Unlike astrological profiles, these tools provide specific, actionable insights based on actual behavioral patterns rather than birth dates. They acknowledge personality's complexity while offering frameworks for genuine self-understanding and personal growth. The neurological basis for why we find astrological descriptions so convincing lies in how the brain processes self-relevant information. Functional MRI studies show that when people read statements they believe describe them personally, specific brain regions associated with self-reflection and autobiographical memory activate intensely. This neural activity creates a subjective feeling of recognition and truth that can be difficult to distinguish from actual accuracy. The brain essentially tricks itself into feeling certainty about vague statements by generating vivid personal memories that seem to confirm the description. This process happens automatically and unconsciously, making it nearly impossible to resist without deliberate critical thinking. Interestingly, cultural differences exist in how strongly people experience the Barnum effect and believe in astrology. Collectivist cultures, where group identity matters more than individual uniqueness, sometimes show stronger acceptance of astrological thinking, possibly because zodiac signs provide a socially acceptable way to discuss personality without seeming self-centered. Conversely, highly individualistic cultures might embrace astrology as a way to affirm uniqueness and personal destiny. These cultural variations demonstrate that astrological belief serves different psychological and social functions across contexts, but the underlying cognitive mechanisms remain universal. The commercial astrology industry capitalizes on these psychological tendencies with remarkable sophistication. Professional horoscope writers craft their predictions using time-tested techniques that maximize the Barnum effect. They employ specific linguistic strategies like using the word sometimes to hedge predictions, offering contradictory traits that cover all possibilities, and focusing on universally desired outcomes like love, success, and personal growth. These carefully engineered statements feel personal and insightful, while remaining vague enough to apply to virtually anyone. The industry generates billions of dollars annually by exploiting cognitive biases that evolution hardwired into human brains. The ultimate irony is that astrology succeeds not because the stars influence personality, but because human psychology works exactly as science predicts. Understanding these mechanisms offers something more valuable than astrological predictions: genuine insight into how minds construct meaning and form beliefs in an uncertain world.